Basically, when we're dealing with coon, possum, and skunk, the smaller predators that do the depredation on the nesting ground birds, primarily the turkeys, these are the animals that are going in and taking these eggs night after night after night and eventually killing these hens on the nest. The later in the fur harvesting season, or the closest to the nesting season for those birds that we do this harvest and remove these animals from that area, the less influx we have from the surrounding populations and the adjoining properties where we have additional animals move back in to fill that void that are going to pick up that slack and remove those eggs or depredate on those nesting hens. Just going in and removing a percentage of the population of these coon, possum, and skunks and bleeding that population down, reducing that population, we can increase the nesting success of the hen turkey.
We started out targeting the raccoons and possums around our deer feeders because it had them all concentrated in a certain location where we could more effectively take out a larger number of animals in a short amount of time. Those Grizz Getters are a neat little trap. It's just a little piece of 1.25-inch pipe that is dog-proof. So if you're trapping in an area that has some non-targets like dogs or house cats or things like that running around, this is a safe trapping alternative that you can use. And with these Grizz Getters, you can set them, the coons stick their hand down in there, trip the trap. So it's just holding him. It's just like putting him in a set of handcuffs and he's there for you the next morning.
On these traps, we're using a marshmallow underneath the trigger. The trigger's a metal trigger. By putting a marshmallow underneath the trigger, the coon cannot steal the bait from the trap without firing the trap, and that's what the marshmallow accomplishes. Just something to go underneath the trigger that makes the coon have to fire the trap. Set the trap, you simply squeeze it, set it like so. It's a pretty simple unit. Trap needs to go into the ground and be fairly rigid. Basically, just stick it in the ground and twist it to where the trap's solid. That way, when the coon pulls against it, you know, there's something there for the resistance to hold the trap in the ground. Little fish for bait, jack mackerel, sardines, anything. And then just so you can tell if the bait's been robbed out of it, so you can check it fast, just a marshmallow on the top of it. Let you visually check it from a distance to see if the trap's been worked. Pretty simple and fast. As a fur harvester and as a trapper trapping for fur, most trappers, myself included a lot of times, we do everything we can to avoid the possums and the possum catch because there's no market for that animal. But they're so important in the whole management perspective as far as removing the predators that are doing the depredation on those birds if we're going to enhance that bird population. And those possums have to be caught. So consequently, it's best if a trapper uses the equipment that it can catch multiple species, possum, coon, and skunk, instead of just the specific, the species-specific tools that we use sometimes. A lot of times with possums specifically, the possums, the range and the ground that they cover, when you come in 30 days ahead of the nesting hen turkey and you take those possums out, they just don't cover enough country to replenish and to replace that empty void before that hen comes in and nests and actually hatches those chicks.
Catching possums isn't real glamorous work. I mean, it's not like you've got a coyote or a bobcat or a coon in a trap, but trust me, getting rid of those possums will do just as much for your management program as anything. They're going to consume an incredible amount of feed, and they're also going to take out a large number of your turkey nest and your quail nest. So just because it's not a glamorous thing to say I caught 15 possums on my property, doing that is going to do you more good to your management plan than anything else.
With the coons, they cover more ground, and the coons will go quite some distance in search of food sometimes. We bleed this population down or reduce the population, and the nesting success goes up. The other thing that most people don't understand concerning possum and coon, in the spring of the year, with the exception of what they find down along the rivers and down along the waterways as far as frogs and crayfish to eat, they really have no other food source but eggs until the mulberries and the other mast crops come on in there around the 1st of June. That's what they're here for. They're here to do nest depredation. That's how they survive. That's their primary food source, and they're good at it. A lot of people blame wet springs on these birds as the reason they have a poor hatch, but we have these wetter, damper springs, and you and I can smell that nest.
Well, a coon can certainly smell better than we can, and it makes it a lot easier for those coon. Those coon will take a nest a day, 7 days a week, for 6 or 7 weeks. And just a pair of coons in this pine country per section can severely impact a turkey population.
One thing, when you start trapping around these feeders, if you'll keep a camera set up like that, not only are you monitoring your deer herd, but you're also monitoring those non-targets like coons and possums and crows and hogs or whatever else you got. So those cameras are an invaluable tool, not only scouting your deer, but knowing exactly what you've got consuming your feed for the economic benefit. Another benefit to those cameras is if you hire someone like Robert to come in and trap, it lets him know what's out there that he needs to be targeting, whether there's one coon or whether there's a half a dozen. And then after he's gone, you can keep monitoring to see what your recruitment rate is, because when you start trapping these predators around feeders, this is not a one-shot deal. I mean, this is a multi-year process before you're gonna see real benefit to your turkey numbers. We caught 2 here yesterday, and since we had been running cameras and knew that there was multiple coons visiting the site, left the traps out, got another one today. We're still not gonna take them up. We got several more days of trapping, and we'll more than likely catch some more coons in this same spot. But if we hadn't been monitoring these locations with those cameras, we may have pulled the traps yesterday. So the trail cameras are an invaluable tool. Well, with the cameras set up on these locations, we were monitoring them every day. And we got to noticing that some of the possums, especially some of the big possums, they were too lazy to actually go into the bottom of the Grizz Getter and get the bait. They were just plucking the marshmallow from the top. So that's where live traps came into play. So just like any type of management, be it food plots, herd management, or now trapping, there's not one silver bullet that's gonna do the whole thing. We use the Grizz Getters, we use leg hole traps, then we use these live traps as cleanup. Using box traps is how I started out trapping when I was a kid, because they're safe and effective. One of the problems that I'd always had is getting the bait to the back. You had to reach your arm in, put it on a stick, and dribble it over the treadle. Well, these traps that we're using now are made by Hilltop Cage Shop. They're the most well-designed trap that I've ever used, and the reason being that I like them so well is they have got a bait door in the back. They've thought of everything. Take this clip out. There's a door right here. You can stick your hand in, put your marshmallows, your jack mackerel, sardines, whatever in there, and close it back up before you set your trap. So it's simple to use, and again, these things are safe. Family can use them. It's a good way to introduce people into trapping. If you catch a non-target animal, it's real easy to release it. Now I know you're looking at that poor little coon, either sitting in the box trap or got his foot caught in that Grizz Getter, and you think, how could that sweet little adorable critter do anything to hurt my management plan? Well, you can just get that thought out of your mind. Take a look at this little clip right here, and you'll know why that cute little fuzzy thing can keep deer out of the feeder and can also wear out a turkey nest.
A lot of times the landowners are more interested in seeing the coyote and the bobcat populations harvested and seeing those animals caught, because they listen to the coyotes at night and they see the coyotes when they're out setting on the deer stands, and of course they see the bobcats, and they get the idea that the bobcats and the coyotes are what are impacting the turkey population. But that's not normally the case. Bobcats can and will be found around turkeys and do harvest a large number of birds, but if a bobcat took a bird, let's say a bobcat takes 3 birds a week all year long, maybe that bobcat's going to catch 150 birds. But that one pair of raccoons is going to take a nest of eggs every night for 6 weeks if they can find them. And most of the times that raccoon will eventually catch that hen on the nest, and you will have a negative population growth because you lost the nesting hen on the nest to that raccoon as well. The impact of the raccoon and the possums on these birds is a lot more tremendous than the bobcats or the coyotes could ever begin to be. The other thing is, by taking and managing all of these animals, managing the total resource, when you reduce raccoon and the possum populations and reduce the bobcat and coyote populations as well, you enhance other animals and other wildlife resources there as well, whether it's the mice and the rats, the cotton rats, the rabbits, the squirrels, and you create more food for the remaining animals, so all of the attention is not focused on those eggs in that ground nest.
Removing predators like raccoons and possums from your property in late winter through early spring can greatly improve the nesting success for your quail and turkey hens. And an added bonus, if you're using supplemental feed for your white-tailed deer, removing those non-targets during that time of year can also prove valuable for the nutritional program for your deer herd.